All right. Good morning. So, yeah, we got a new moon today, and that always brings change. This new moon I can really feel, and I'll tell you why. It's a really powerful, powerful new moon. What's happening is we just had the sun square Saturn, then it conjuncted Jupiter, and now it's in this really long, drawn out sextile to Mars. So it's a very powerful new moon. It actually happened in the sidereal zodiac at about just under 10 degrees of sidereal Gemini. So what's important about this is that's, ruled by Mercury, which is communications and what do we see going on in the world. I just watched this morning Trump over at NATO, and of course what's happening, all the news buzzing about Iran and, Russia and Ukraine and Israel, all that is at the front and center right now. And it's interesting because when you look at the astronomy, which is really what astrology is, the sun and Mars march pretty close to a near speed. The sun is at 1 degree per day, or approximately, and the Mars can speed up or slow down when it goes close to retrograde, but its average speed is about 40 minutes per day. So we have had, and you really got to watch this when you do interrogation astrology. I see when people ask questions, and I'm always doing interrogations or elections, you have to be very, very careful. It's like a relay race up there in the solar system. You'll sometimes see an aspect in a chart, and you'll go, oh, look, the sun sextile Mars. Well, other things sweep in because of their either speed or slowness and perfect. And that's what's been happening here probably the last 2-3 weeks. And we've had Mars and the sun in a sustained sextile. Now you might say, well, what does that mean? Well, it's very productive. It gives a lot of action, a lot of force. And that's what we've been seeing in the world. But we had the sun make an aspect to a square of Saturn. And then just right before this new moon yesterday, we had the sun conjunct Jupiter. Plain English, a lot of energy here. So this actually is a good new moon. It's likely to bring a lot of productivity this month and rearrangement. And I always tell people it's a great time to reset, rethink, set new goals, etc. The ancients paid a lot of attention to new moons because what they would do is they would always meditate on it. I often light a candle and do a meditation on a new moon. Of course, this one happened at 3:32 a.m. in the morning, Pacific Daylight Time. So if you were on the East Coast or in Europe, yes, you would have been able to enjoy that during somewhat daylight hours there. But East Coast would have been 6:32 a.m. The Midwest would have been 5:32 a.m. But it's gone now. But there's a lot of lore about the moon. In fact, many cultures, the Hebrew culture, would actually look at perpetuating the new moon over the next 72 hours, which is very, very interesting. And there's a lot of merit to that because the new moon is actually when the moon conjuncts the sun from Earth's vantage point or perspective. It's astronomy. And it elongates out slowly into the first quarter. So you won't be able to see the new moon again for a few days, and it'll just be a little sliver in the sky. And then, of course, it grows until the first quarter. And then, of course, we get the full moon. And if you get in touch with the moon alone, it's just amazing how much energy it has. And I want to bring something up. In many of the ancient documents that I have, it always mentions that covert operations should be done. If you don't want anybody to find out about anything, when you do it, you should do it right before a new moon, preferably if there's good aspects. And isn't that interesting? The military had mentioned with Trump that they actually went in on this mission right as the moon was where it was, going to a new moon, because it gave not only visual cover, but I think they know also, too, that it gives covert energetic cover. So in other words, doing things right before a new moon tend to be very secret and covert. And I think that's something the military has always known about, and they probably pay more attention to the visual aspect, that the moon is dark and the sky isn't illuminated, right? Because when you get a full moon, you walk outside during a full moon, it's bright, and it's the reflection of the sun. But it's also interesting that many of the ancient astrological texts talk about covert operations are best done right before a new moon, and that's exactly what happened on this situation in Iran. So the world is definitely boiling here right now, with a lot of tensions that are now hopefully going to subside. And again, I've been mentioning this Kalisarpa Yoga, which again is not a term that's in the ancient texts. What it is it's a phrase that means all the planets are in between the moon's eclipse points. And every 2 weeks, you're going to have the moon break it. Now, this will actually happen 5 days from now. The moon will sweep out past the node, and it will go, meaning the eclipse point, and it will go on the other side. It'll break the Kalisarpa Yoga. This whole thing is actually broken by Mars, July, right about the 28th of July. July is a very concerning month for me because we've got a number of things happening. We've got Mercury stationing going retrograde. We've got we've got Saturn stationing and going retrograde, Neptune as well. We also have the Mars making a conjunction to Ketu, which is the moon's south node. And many of the ancient astrologers always said that Ketu and Mars had a lot of similarities, and they tend to be very volatile when they would come into conjunction. And that's going to happen right in about the third week, about the 20th of July. So we'll keep our eye on that one. And last but not least, the one I've been mentioning the most is the Pleiades. You've got the Uranus sweeping over Alcyon, and it's actually sweeping over a series of fixed stars in the Pleiades. And that is very powerful. As I had mentioned many, many times, every time it happens, about every 84 to 86 years, why? That's how long it takes Uranus to go around the solar system. And what does it do? It always stirs up trouble. Last time, like I said, World War II. Before that was Civil War. Before that was Revolutionary War. And if we keep leapfrogging back, even if Uranus wasn't discovered, you will find just because we didn't discover it doesn't mean it wasn't there. And believe me, it was there. So what's interesting is this clock really seems to show up. And again, look at where the world's at right now. You got all these, terms of World War III and everything else. I hope I'm right about this. I just don't see a world war cutting loose right now. I don't think it would be allowed. I really don't. When I say allowed, I think there's forces here, extraterrestrial and divine as well, that would not allow it. The weaponry that we have at this point is scary powerful. And, just these bunker busters was a little idea of where that's at, let alone directed energy weapons and lasers and particle beams and space-directed weapons, psychotronic weapons, new and unique ways to kill people, right? That's what the human race seems to be really good at, finding new and unique ways to kill people. And, it's a shame that we even have to have this stuff. But the problem is, it's like the bully on the playground. If you don't have it, they'll beat everybody up. So it's just the way it is. So anyways, I'm getting a lot of comments in here, and just kind of leaning towards that. People are saying they couldn't sleep last night. Yeah, person was saying they couldn't sleep last night, got up all night and up and lit a candle, and apparently they sensed the new moon. It's interesting. All these new moons, if you track them, if you have a way of looking at your birth chart, you will find that everybody's going to have a new moon in a different house. And, for anybody not familiar with astrology, what does that mean? Well, houses are the terrestrial, you could say, segments in your birth chart that rule areas of your life. And see, each one of us were born at a specific longitude and latitude, right? At a certain time, month, day, and year. Well, that's like an imprint. So the eastern horizon becomes your ascendant. And you can look at this in sidereal, or you can look at it in tropical. Give me 1 second. So what's interesting about this is that each new moon will happen in a different house. And more importantly, it'll happen in different aspects to your chart. So this is why I always say, forget Trinity, Neo, and Morpheus. This is truly the matrix of the soul. And everybody's chart will react differently. And you'll probably never get a new moon to happen exactly the same point in time. And then you've got lunar mansion. So this is really astronomy. And it's really quite fascinating when you look at it. And again, like I said, I was a skeptic of astrology originally back in the 70s. And the more I started cracking into it, look at it, I went, wow, this is not only interesting and accurate, but it's astronomy. And that's what I love about some of the ancient texts. They actually said the Book of Astronomy. One of my favorite books is Guido Bonatti, and quite an interesting set of astrology. Almost 1,700 pages written in 1100 AD of astrology. There was no printing presses. I mean, that took a lot of ink and a lot of feather pens to write that one. 1,700 pages of astrology in the 1100s. And that was much later. And he references all the ancients back then. Same thing in India. We see texts that are extremely ancient and old. So this is a science that goes back to antiquity. And it really seems like the royalty, the generals, and maybe, what was his name? J.P. Morgan, he might have said it best. He said, millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. And it is kind of ironic how they time major world events as we go back in time. They seem to eerily line up with these major configurations of the astrology. So pretty wild. Like 9/11, I'll never forget that one. I'm on the phone with another astrologer, Arch Crawford. He did a lot of work out in Wall Street. And we both said, something's going to happen here. And the next day I watched the towers, go like sparklers to the ground. We won't get into that conspiracy theory, but we certainly know it wasn't the way they told us, right? So, but anyhow, anybody who looks into that one, I've had Army Corps of Engineers tell me about that one, but we won't delve into that. Nothing to worry about, folks. Just the news telling you what to believe. So, and they do it right in front of you too. Anyways, somebody's saying they'd love to have a copy of that book. I don't know what book they're talking about here, but somebody's coming back to the reflexology. I hope your ear is better. Yeah, my ear is getting better. I got some weird viral thing, I got to tell you, and it showed up in my chart. And it's interesting because this new moon happened right next to my moon, and very powerful. So, it's always good to look at these things. In apothecary and in medical astrology, they paid a great deal of attention to when they would administer herbs and treatments to the aspects of the moon. If the moon was waxing, of course, waning, on what aspects it made. It's absolutely stunning. I could sit here and show you tables that literally track the moon from when a disease is, asked about in an interrogation, and you can see right when it changes. So this new moon is going to bring change for me. It's just bringing me right back here right now. So a lot of fun to look at all this stuff. So somebody's saying here that 1,700-page astrology book is written in the 1100s. Oh, that's what they're saying. Yeah, that's a book called the Book of Astronomy by an astrologer named Guido Bonatti. He lived in Italy. An amazing book. I really have to say, this will come right back. It's an amazing book. I might even have it here. No, I don't have it to put on the screen, but the book, you can actually get this right now at a place called bendykes.com. BENDYKES.com. He's a professor in, I think it's the University of Minnesota. And they have a trust that did a whole bunch of translations. And it's interesting, way back in the late 80s, early 90s, I was in conversation with the three Roberts, Robert Zoller, Robert Schmidt, Robert Hand, all of whom I like, but they all ended up dividing. They started a project called Project Hindsight, which was looking back at these ancient texts in Greek, Latin, Arabic, etc. And they were looking back at, the history of the westernized astrology. And this gets into the Vedic stuff too, which is very fascinating. And long story short, they started doing translations of Banati, but they only did segments of it. And I got every bit of that stuff. And I was just like, wow, this is like a whole nother level of depth. And it's really astronomy, and quite fascinating. And then I stumbled into Rabbi Ibn Ezra, who was also from he's a little bit before. He's right around 1000 AD, I believe it was. I could be wrong on my dates here, but that's another book called The Beginning of Wisdom, which I really like a lot. Absolutely stunning. Angels are in there, ruling planets and glyphs and sigils. You begin to see that this rabbit hole goes so much deeper than your sun sign, and very, very interesting stuff. But yeah, for anybody who's interested, that book is called The Book of Astronomy. You can get it at bendykes.com. The problem is he's now divided it up into all these different books on elections, horary, et cetera, nativities. So I have the original leather-bound books that was in 2 volumes. You can't get that anymore. So he's got them all divided out in paperback. But good stuff, really good stuff. And again, to you tropical astrologers, that is based on tropical astrology, and quite profound, I might add, quite profound. Though back then, in 1000 AD or 1100 AD, the precession of the equinoxes hadn't gone that far. So there's a lot of stuff in there that could be sidereal. And that's really a interesting debate that I've had with a lot of different astrologers, particularly Rob Hand. He said to me, he said, yeah, a lot of stuff might be sidereal. I always like Robert Hand. Many people might know of him. He was the author of the book Planets and Transits, which was written in 1976. My mother studied with him. And Robert's getting quite on in years now, but he lives in Las Vegas, also known as Las Vegas. And I really like Robert. Why I like him is because he's cantankerous. He doesn't buy into all this love, light, and clueless astrology. He's very matter of fact. He's very scientific, actually. And Robert contributed a tremendous amount to astrology in the computer era. He was actually I think he was the founder or one of the founders of a company called Astrolab, which is an amazing company. They sell all kinds of software for astrology. And so it's quite good. And that was back in the days when it was C:// DOS. I don't know if any of you remember that one, but that was in the early days of Windows. And of course, running on the Commodore 128s and 64s. Back when we thought we were cool, we could cast a chart in a computer, right? When I started, it was all by hand. Which was actually, I have to say, I was even doing astrology by hand and Vedic astrology in the late 80s and 90s. And the reason why, there wasn't any Vedic astrology programs that were worth anything that I could find that did Vedic astrology. And that's always a funny story I tell. I had a guy who was a teacher from India, and I had many of them. And I'd always go to his ashram, and he would say, Jeff, you must always cast chart by hand, because you'll really get the feel of where the planets are and the aspects and everything. And he was right about that. But what was interesting, I came in there, I think around 1998, with the first really viable Vedic astrology program. It was put up by Parashara's Light. I still use it today. And he looked at it, and we cast the chart. He goes, oh my God. He goes, that is so fast. And we checked the calculations, so we're right on. He says, I want a copy. And I said, no, Grasshopper, you must always cast chart by hand. He goes, no, I want a copy. I said, yes, you do. So computer programs are really valuable to astrologers today. The key is, we got to remember, and this is the same thing with AI, it's stupid unless you check it that it's doing everything right. But once you get them set up right, they're pretty good. I can calculate massive amounts of data in my 30 or 40 minute preparation for readings that would take me hours to do. And I am able to traverse such a huge amount of astrological calculation and aspects in preparation for a reading that I could not do without computers. It'd be literally, I don't know how the ancient court astrologers did it. And well, I actually do. I've heard that they had assistants. I mean, think about what an ancient astrologer had to do to cast a chart. Somebody trot outside and look at the shadow. They'd look at where was the shadow of the sun. And of course, at night, I don't know how they did that one. I haven't really heard about that, but they take an Astrolab. Let me show you this. This is a really cool device. I've shown this before, but I'll show it again. This is kind of fun. This is a device called an Astrolab. You can see they would actually wear it. And this is quite a device. It actually has latitude, so you spin it around, and it's very hard to see here, but if I can hold it up right, but you can see it's a whole disc that is spun that you line up to the time of day and also the zodiacal, configurations, and it tells you where the planets are and where the ascendant is. Pretty wild. And this was Chaucer developed this particular one. So really fun stuff. And boy, we come a long way from there. Huh? So right now, I mean, the accuracy of these computer programs are pretty doggone good. We've actually checked it, and a lot of fun. So anyways, yeah, I'm just reading a few more comments. I cannot stay too long today. I got to keep this one to 30 minutes because I have an appointment this morning that I have to prepare for. So anyways, so everyone's thanking me for the daily updates. Yeah, well, you're very welcome. The other thing is somebody's saying here, the body double of Trump at NATO is too risky to get in the den of vipers. Interesting. Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that because I actually saw him one time and it doesn't look exactly like him. There's so many things going on in this world that we don't know about. And we certainly saw that with Biden, didn't we? And I think, again, that whole ball of yarn's still going to come unraveled. I still maintain once all this dust settles, I get we're going to get a peace deal, or Trump's going to get a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. There's going to be a compromise there. And it's very interesting how we don't see much footage at all. We see every bomb drop in Israel and Iran. But we don't see much over in Ukraine and Russia. That whole situation is a lot more mysterious than I think we know. And even Trump kind of alludes to, some things there that are not exactly on the line. And again, we've heard the rumors of labs, the biolabs, and all the other things that were going on. And I don't want to get into Ukraine, but that actually encompasses a province that used to be called Galatia. It still is, actually. And some of your most powerful people in the world came out of that area, and particularly all your Hollywood moguls and etc. So very interesting area, and a very powerful area, I might add. A lot of stuff connected to that whole area. That rabbit hole goes, I think, a lot deeper than we know. And, this brings me to something here, too. I want to just take just a second here. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you something here about, Donald Trump, because, I know a lot of people love him, a lot of people hate him. And I'm not here to promote or demote or do any political things here. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to put Trump's chart on the screen here. And you can see this is Donald Trump's chart. He was born June 14th, 1946. I rectified him to 10/53/21, of course, in Queens, New York. You can see right up there. So, and again, I got other tabs up here. But you can see this is Donald Trump's chart right here. So he has a very unusual chart. And I can see why people love him or hate him, because he has Mars in the ascendant. Now, that's just one element, except that is not just a regular Mars. See, for Leo rising, Mars is what we call the chart indicator. Now, for you Vedic astrologers, that's called Yoga Karaka. Yoga means combination, Karaka means indicator. So it's the chart's indicator. And Mars rules the 4th and it rules the 9th. So that's just not any old Mars. That is a really powerful Mars. It's extremely dignified. And it's very strong in the Navamshas too. So here's the thing. what really gets Trump's chart going is the Lord of the Ascendant, meaning, see, he's Leo rising, so that's a fancy term astrologers use. That means the planet ruling the eastern horizon at the time a person is born is the Lord of the Ascendant. Well, where is it in Donald Trump's chart? It's in the midheaven. It's in the 10th house. In fact, I mentioned back in 2016, everybody's, oh, he's never going to win, right? I said, oh, yes, he is, because he had this sun progress by what we call solar arc direction right over his ascendant, almost exactly when he won the presidency. It was so accurate. It was creepy. And see, your birth chart is literally you could say, imprint of the soul at birth. And time, I literally believe God created time so everything wouldn't happen at once. And time clocks forward. So not only does Donald Trump have an extremely powerful Mars in the ascendant, this is why he likes fights. He likes everything. He's a warrior. And the Lord of the ascendant, the sun in the 10th house, also with Rahu, right off the bat, that was all the ancient texts would say. If the Lord of the Ascendant's in the midheaven, that person's a ruler. And if it's the sun, he could be a king. Now, it's interesting, the kingmaker and everything else. And I have to, I don't want to get into politics and everybody's opinion of Donald Trump, or I'll get 10,000, hate mails or appreciating mails, because everybody likes him and everybody hates him. Half the world hates him, half the world loves him. But I got to tell you, from an astrological standpoint, this is an exceedingly powerful chart. He was also born during a Kalisarpa Yoga. If you notice, all the planets here are literally on one side of these horseshoes known as the moon's north and south node, or Rahu and Ketu. Plain English, exceedingly powerful. Anybody who is born during a Kalisarpa Yoga, it's a very, very special incarnation. Moreover, he also was born literally right before a full moon. And I always find it funny, like Gavin Newsom and the rest of them, they're all running around trying to emulate Trump by, doing debates and causing trouble or acting, whatever. They won't do it because it's not in the chart. When I look at Gavin Newsom's chart, I'm not seeing it. So anyways, yeah, and he's about ready to raise our gas prices up to, I think, $1 or more per gallon. He's canceling, the refineries here, all in the name of climate change, So, so we're gonna be paying fuel prices. I wish California wasn't so nice, because it's such a gorgeous place to live in terms of weather and the infrastructure. I love. There's geniuses that live here. In fact, they used to call Los Angeles the city of geniuses, and it really was. I mean, there was so many talented people. There still are here. And a lot of them are getting older, but there's a lot of talented people here. And we just got to get that guy out of here. Like vaudeville, get the hook, get him out, So thank God he doesn't last much longer, until 2026. I think it is, he's out. But if they don't change these voting machines, we will never see an honest election in California, or for that matter, anywhere else. They got to get these laws passed where we get voter ID and get rid of these manipulated voting machines, which is interesting. Kash Patel's working on that one too. Again, this fits the astrology I see by the end of this year, and it's going to start sometime in this summer or fall. You're going to see a lot of stuff come out that is really going to be, I think, jaw-dropping and shocking about what they prosecute and what happens. So we'll see what happens. So anyways, that's what the spring equinox chart said. And by the way, I didn't mention last podcast, we just had the summer solstice here just a few days ago. Very powerful time. That's where the sun gets it to the highest point, or the days are longest. Even though the summer, it seems like the sun sets later, but it's actually the longest right around June 20th or 21st, which it was this year. So very, very powerful. So, yeah, somebody's mentioning how California is so sad now. Hope it bounces back. I think if they get Gruesome out, it will. So many people are angry about this. And, it's quite interesting. A lot of companies have left here, and they're going to drive more out. I even talked to truck drivers. They only want to come in here. They're lucky as long as they continue with diesel, they can just get in, drop the load, get out and fill up somewhere else. Because I know I have a diesel, and the darn thing is expensive to fill up. That's why I drive the motorcycle. But anyways, yeah, a lot of fun. So anyways, I'm just reading a couple more comments here because I've really got to run about right now. But Donald Trump, one last thing I want to mention about him is he has Jupiter. He took the presidency right when Jupiter was in his midheaven, or I should say his 10th house. It's now in the 11th house. So he's really in a powerful place in his chart, whether you love him or hate him. The media and the propaganda talk show host machines can hammer and hammer and hammer away. But I think it's going to be like punching jello. I really do, because they're not going to get anywhere. And, they're going to still try and kill him. He has some very dangerous stuff right now. Mars is transiting over his ascendant, and it's also going to be passing, into a square to his nodes and his sun. But I think, the real issue was last year when that Mars crossed his midheaven with Uranus. That's when the bullets whizzed past his head. And that's, was right on, absolutely right on. And again, they read the verdict right when Uranus was crossing his midheaven the first time, and he won the presidency on the second time. So very interesting how the astrology, astronomy, whatever you want to call it, has mirrored what's been happening. And again, to you that hate him, I can tell you one thing: the chart of the United States, I think we're on a positive trajectory like we've never seen before. I really do. That's what the astrology of the United States says. Yeah, we've got some challenges, but in general, we have this sun by primary direction trining the United States Jupiter, and that means growth. And you can't deny that right now, all kinds of businesses coming in here, trillions of dollars worth of it. And I think once the Federal Reserve, which is represented by the real owners, lowers interest rates, or Donald Trump does that with Powell, I think, and I hope he does. I really hope, and this is what I was seeing here, is that we've really got to get to a point to where the United States gets back to printing its own money. And this is very interesting because I mentioned a lot of times about Wilson. Wilson is the guy who signed the Federal Reserve Act in, and that was right on a Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Right after that, we had World War I. And of course, they showed everybody who was running this place during the Great Depression in 1929, when everything they literally caused. And when I say they, I'm talking about the bankers. And I have to say, this is really the root of it. Aaron Russo, I quote him a lot. He really nailed it down. I'll just play this clip really quick.
The real problem is the banking industry and the bankers in this country. That's where the real problem lies. That's the root of our problem. Well, that's why we've lost America.
Well, it's interesting is he wrote a documentary called From Freedom to Fascism, and that may or may not be around anymore. But Aaron, if anybody doesn't know who he was the producer on many movies, particularly one which I really like was Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd and Don Amici and all that. So it was a really good movie. If you haven't seen it. But anyways, what was so great about Aaron is how much he exposed of what's really going on. And he had a series of situations that had happened to him back in Chicago. And he just got really irritated with the fact that he saw what was going on. And I always mention this book called The Great Taking by David Webb. You can order that book free online. Read that book. That book will scare your pants off. It really will. In fact, you'll find you don't own your pants if the bankers want to take it. And I was just talking to someone in another country who was telling me that they're getting tax documents. Actually, it was in this country. Where they have to identify everything they own. Everything they own. See, this is scary stuff. So this is what he's talking about. And of course, George Carlin famously said, forget the politicians, you have owners. So not to get political here, but I think the astrology is at a turning point right now for the United States. And again, many people are predicting, we're at critical mass here with all this financial stuff that's going on. And this is when empires fall. And I think the United States surviving this Pluto return that it's had for the last few years and what's been done to it, we actually need what's being done by this administration right now, or we will swirl down the drain. It was set up that way. There's a book that I want to mention. I should put it on the screen. I'll put it up next podcast. It's called The Cloward Piven Strategy. This is two socialists who are economists who wrote it. You can look it up. It's called Cloward Piven. And I can't remember their names, but I'll put it up. It's kind of scary. And you know what they say in this book? The sum total of it is, first thing you got to do is create so many regulations that nobody can get anything done. That's how you destroy a country. The second thing you got to do is create so much massive debt that it can never be paid for. And the third thing they advocated, flood the borders. Mass immigration that's uncontrollable. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like a Pluto return that just happened on this country? You bet it does. And that's exactly what did. George Washington or Thomas Jefferson, they actually said it. If you want to destroy a country, loot the treasury on the way out the door. And that's exactly what just happened. So this is going to take a lot of power and a lot of stuff to come back. And whether you love him or hate him, I can tell you the astrology says this guy in the White House right now, as long as they don't shoot him, poison him, or make his plane crash, just might pull this country off, whether you love him or hate him. So I got to run, folks. And again, don't mean to get political, which I'm trying not to do, but I can tell you this is what the astrology says. And I got to tell you what the astrology says to me. And let's hope it's right. So you guys, I'll catch you on, I think it's Sunday. Yeah. So have a great week. And again, you'll feel this energy on Friday. I think Friday is the 25th, isn't it? Yeah, I can't remember. Here I can look. Yeah. No. What am I saying? It's the 30th. It's actually next Monday is when the moon breaks the Kalisarpa Yoga again for 2 weeks. So powerful energies when that happens. We'll talk more about that. So everybody have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you on Sunday. Thanks so much for watching.